Good morning, everyone. I'd also like to thank NGLCC as well as IDB for inviting me to speak on this topic. I'll talk briefly about the Maryland Public Service Commission Supplier Diversity Program and then go into the importance of advocacy to create a more inclusive environment. When the Maryland Public Service Commission created their Supplier Diversity Conference, it was initially aimed at providing women, minority, service-disabled, veteran-owned businesses, and nonprofits greater opportunities to participate and compete for contracts and subcontracts with the public utilities that exist in the state of Maryland. So the program's been in existence for over 20 years. And when we were at the height of the program, there were 19 signatories. So these are 19 companies that are licensed to do business in the state of Maryland. And currently right now we have 16 active signatories. And, you know, the businesses have left. Either the businesses are no longer existing or they simply chose to not participate into the program. An important piece about this is that the program is also voluntary. So it's not a mandatory program, but just about every public utility or public service provider in the state of Maryland has signed on to be a member of this. All of the participating companies have signed a memorandum of understanding with the commission that outlines the goal to award 25% of their total dollars spent on contracts, subcontracts, and purchase orders to diverse suppliers. So again, the intent is to focus on what we define as underutilized, underserved populations that own businesses in the state of Maryland. Additionally, we have been working with the utilities to make sure that they invest in workforce diversity. So they're looking at their own employee structure, and they're also working within the communities that they are taking these contracts. So that may be hiring locally, that may be working with businesses in that community as they complete projects. So we try to reinforce at a number of levels that utilities work from a top down as far as looking at these populations. The DSR, or diverse spend ratio, is something that we monitor as a collective and as individual signatories. So that's essentially the ratio of their total procurement divided by what they spend on diverse suppliers. And that's where we get the 25% goal. And we continue to strive for that. Not everyone has met that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as I move on. The Commission hosts an annual public conference hearing during which the Commission considers testimony as well as public comments on diversity procurement practices in Maryland through these regulated utilities. The hearing is one of the requirements of our Code of Maryland regulations and the MOU, so it's a memorandum of understanding between the Service Commission and these utilities. The utilities include investor-owned utilities, cooperatives, telecommunication companies, transportation companies, and the MOU requires that these companies file annual reports and annual plans with the Commission, and it's individually, so each company should be doing this. And through these plans, they discuss, it's an annual plan, so they will have short-term goals, but they will also redefine their long-term goals. And these goals are focused on how they're going to actively engage and continue to maintain relationships with the groups that fall under this MOU. The Commission will prepare a report to discuss with the commissioners based on their filings. The report summarizes data that's collected as a part of the program and instituted by the Commission. And the hearing that follows is an opportunity for the Commission to review the annual report data, to listen to concerns, comments, and suggestions offered by the different parties. This includes advocacy groups and the companies themselves. Also, this hearing is an opportunity to assess and highlight efforts made towards the goals set forth in the MOU. Another important piece is that the Commission uses this information that they get each year, and we use it to influence policy decisions. So the program has made significant strides since 2015. As I shared earlier, the program is more than 20 years old. And in 2019, for the first time in the program's history, the signatories collectively have met the aspirational goal of 25% total spend towards minority, women, service-disabled, veteran-owned businesses, and for the nonprofit entities. Diverse spend over this time averaged about 694 million, while total utility procurement was at about 3.17 billion. And then the average growth during this period was about 13%. So this year, 16 signatories filed their annual reports for the program, and in total, they spent 1.07 billion. This is a record amount for our program in procurement of goods and services from diverse suppliers, while reporting 3.6 billion in total utility procurement. So that's about a third of their overall contract budget is going to these diverse vendors. As a result, the diverse spend ratio that I talked about before, which is a key metric that we track, increased to 29.69%, which is the highest recorded DSR in history, and then the second time that the 25% goal has been met or exceeded. Last year, I apologize.
No problem. Thank you.
And now, so I'm towards the end, so if you lose me, we may have like a power issue here. Now we include LGBT-owned enterprises. To give you a rundown of this year's spend, minority enterprises received about 55 million. So this is considering that 1.07 billion that I spoke of. Minority-owned enterprises received about $55 million in contracts. Women-owned enterprises, 426 million, service disabled veterans 40 million, veteran-owned businesses 48 million, and not-for-profits received about 18,000. To give you an idea of the time frame in which these companies were able to engage the LGBT-owned business enterprises, the commission made their decision in late September. And then the reporting period closes in December on the 31st. So after not even a full year and basically a quarter of contracting and collecting data, we've received the first reports of diverse spend with LGBT certified and owned enterprises. So this year, LGBT-owned enterprise spend was at almost $64,000 for the 2019 reporting year, and the signatories continue to work to identify ways to seek out and actively engage more businesses. Other companies are working to implement measures that allow them to track this kind of data. We have some companies, because this was never a requirement, they are unable to track it internally, but they're working to implement measures to do so. And of all the participating companies in their annual plans, they will now set out incremental goals along with detailed outlines that explain their strategies and how they're going to continue to engage with LGBT enterprise and vendors. They'll submit them to the commission for review, and we'll discuss that as a part of our annual hearing. Now, I spent the bulk of the presentation talking about our inclusive procurement program in its entirety. The most important part of my speech, if you will, is I cannot say enough that advocacy moves the needle. The NGLCC, its local chapter, and other interested parties showed up to each commission hearing with data, with business owners and their steadfast resolve over the past several years. And without their persistence, LGBT-owned enterprises would not have been on our radar as a diverse spend category. They provided case studies, examples of successes in other locales, like Justin showed in his presentation, that the commission actually considered during its decision-making process. So while the structure does need to be in place, without advocates, you may not get a lot of traction. And I know that I'm running up on my time, so I will stop. But I also wanted to invite everyone this year. The hearing is now virtual due to the pandemic, so anyone can attend. The hearing is in 2 weeks on July 28th. So if anybody is interested, I believe I put my contact information on the first slide, so I will put that up for a second. And you are more than welcome to contact me directly, and we can get the hearing information out to you.